All right, welcome everyone to this deep dive, and we're tackling essential English for anyone moving to the UK, or
Mm.
just anyone who's curious about life on the other side of the pond. So we're going to be looking at some real-life dialogues
Okay.
to sort of uncover the secrets of navigating conversations every day in Britain.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this deep dive is that we're going beyond just basic vocabulary.
Right.
We're going to be analyzing these dialogues from an experienced English teacher named Katie.
Okay.
She specializes in helping new immigrants adapt to life in the UK.
I mean, her insights are particularly valuable because she's worked extensively in Hong Kong,
Yeah,
so she really understands bridging different cultures through language.
exactly.
She even has an online learning platform to make this transition smoother.
Yeah, and the dialogues that we're going to be diving into cover some pretty essential scenarios, like
Yeah.
setting up utilities, opening a bank account, seeing a doctor, even booking a restaurant.
Yeah, let's start with that first hurdle, setting up those utilities. I was struck by how the dialogue emphasized formal and polite language.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just about knowing the words for electricity or account,
Right.
but it was the subtle ways that those words were used.
Yeah, you'll notice how the customer never directly states their need.
Yeah,
Instead of saying, I need electricity, they phrase it as, could you possibly help me set up an account?
right.
This indirectness is so key to British politeness, especially in formal situations.
Yeah.
It's all about respecting boundaries and making sure that you're not coming across as demanding.
Yeah, I'm already picking up on how much meaning is packed into these seemingly simple phrases.
Right.
How can someone who's new to the UK even begin to grasp these nuances?
Well, one way is to really pay attention to the use of modal verbs,
Okay.
like could, would, and may.
Mm.
These really soften the tone and make requests sound less forceful.
Hmm.
Like, for example, may I have your full name? Sounds much more polite than what's your full name?
Yeah, it's like a subtle dance between clarity and courtesy.
Mm.
You're getting your point across,
Mm.
but in a way that's just considered appropriate for the situation.
Exactly. And this cultural understanding is equally important when you walk into a UK bank to open an account.
Speaking of banks, what struck me in that dialogue was the emphasis on specific documents.
Okay.
They were talking about needing proof of address, like a bank statement or utility bill.
Yeah, that's crucial, not just for opening a bank account, but for so many things in the UK, even getting a mobile phone contract.
Wow.
You might even find it helpful to gather these documents before you arrive to make things smoother.
That's a great tip for our listeners.
Yeah.
It also seemed like the customer in the dialogue was kind of thinking a step ahead
Yeah.
when they asked specifically for a current account with online banking.
Absolutely. It shows they've done their research and they're prepared
Yeah.
for the specifics of the UK banking system. They understand that difference between current accounts for everyday transactions and savings accounts for, well, savings.
Right. It seems being prepared with the right phrases and information can make a big difference in these everyday interactions.
It really does. And this forward thinking also applies when booking a GP appointment,
Okay.
especially within the National Health Service.
Right. The NHS, the dialogue that we have highlights how important it is to clearly state the reason for the appointment,
Yeah.
even mentioning how long you've had symptoms,
Right.
but then the receptionist probes further with what seems to be the problem.
That's a common practice in the UK healthcare system. GPs act as gatekeepers to more specialized care.
Okay.
So receptionists are trained to gather enough information
Mm-hmm.
to assess the urgency and determine the next appropriate step.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting an appointment.
Right.
It's about navigating the system effectively.
Now let's shift gears to another common scenario, buying medicine at a pharmacy.
What stood out to you in that dialogue?
Well, I noticed how the pharmacist specifically asked about allergies before recommending anything. That highlights the really crucial role pharmacists play in the UK healthcare system.
Okay.
They're highly trained professionals who are always prioritizing patient safety.
Yeah.
They're not just dispensing medication, they're ensuring it's suitable for each individual.
And they also provide options.
Yeah,
They present both lozenges and a spray for a sore throat, even comparing their effectiveness and how long they last.
right.
This would be especially helpful for someone unfamiliar with UK over-the-counter medications.
It's all about empowering the customer to make an informed choice. Now we also have two dialogues that are related to restaurants.
Okay.
One for booking a table over the phone and one for ordering food in person.
Even though the situation's different, I noticed that same thread of politeness
Yeah.
we discussed earlier, lots of certainly and may I have your name.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that courtesy extends beyond just formal settings.
You're absolutely right. British etiquette really encourages politeness in a lot of social interactions. Even when you're simply booking a table, clarity is key. The dialogue demonstrates providing specific information, number of people, time, and even a contact number,
Right.
ensuring a smooth and efficient process.
And then when they're actually ordering food, the waiter doesn't just take the order, but actively tries to upsell them.
Oh,
Would you like any sides with that? And would you like any drinks?
That's pretty common practice in restaurants.
Yeah.
Not just in the UK, but it's interesting to see how it unfolds within these practical dialogues.
Yeah.
It reflects a subtle aspect of customer service encouraging diners to really explore the menu fully.
So from utilities to restaurants, there's this underlying theme of politeness and indirect communication.
Yeah.
That seems to be woven into the fabric of British culture.
You've hit the nail on the head, but what's truly fascinating is how this politeness is intertwined with an emphasis on clear and concise expression,
Okay.
which we'll delve into further after a short break.
Right. Sounds good. So we were just talking about that fascinating blend of politeness and conciseness in British communication.
Yeah.
It seems like a bit of a paradox, doesn't it?
It might seem that way at first, but I think they actually complement each other really well.
Go.
Politeness ensures smooth social interactions, while clarity just helps avoid those misunderstandings.
So how does this cultural understanding actually help someone who's new to the UK?
Well, imagine you've just moved to the UK and you're at the doctor's office
Mm-hmm.
and you need to explain your symptoms. Being concise really helps you convey your message quickly and efficiently, while that politeness makes you come across as respectful and considerate,
Right?
even when you might not be feeling well.
You mentioned earlier that Katie actually lived in Hong Kong,
Yeah,
which has a very different communication style.
right.
So how has that experience shaped her approach to teaching English for the UK?
Having lived in a culture where directness is often favored,
Right.
Katie has a really unique perspective on the nuances of British communication. She really emphasizes that this politeness isn't just about being nice.
Okay.
It's about navigating social interactions in a way that avoids confrontation and shows respect for boundaries.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider those dialogues we've been analyzing.
Right.
Even when asking for something simple, like setting up utilities,
Yeah.
the language is very careful and considerate.
Exactly. It's all like, could you possibly?
Right.
And would it be all right if? This indirectness
Yeah.
might feel a bit roundabout at first, but it's absolutely crucial for building rapport and avoiding coming across as rude or demanding.
Yeah, you mentioned that British communication is indirect to avoid confrontation,
Yeah.
but wouldn't it just be more efficient to just say what you mean?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
While direct communication may seem more efficient on the surface, it can sometimes lead to misunderstandings or even offense, especially in a culture that values politeness so much.
I remember when I first moved to the UK, I was so overwhelmed by all the pleases and thank yous.
Oh, yeah.
It felt almost excessive.
Right.
But then I started to realize it was just part of the fabric of everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
It was a way of acknowledging the other person and just showing a bit of appreciation.
Precisely. And as you become more attuned to these subtle cues,
Yeah.
you'll start to pick up on the nuances of meaning that are conveyed through tone of voice and body language,
Right.
not just the words themselves.
It's like there's a whole unspoken language happening beneath the surface.
Exactly. And that's why simply memorizing phrases isn't enough.
Right.
You need to understand the cultural context in which those phrases are used. That's where Katie's teaching background is so valuable.
Mm-hmm. She's designed her online platform to be very practical and interactive.
Yeah.
It's not just about learning grammar rules
Right.
and vocabulary lists. It's about practicing those skills in real-life scenarios.
It's like learning to ride a bike. You can study all the mechanics you want, but until you actually get on and pedal, you won't truly understand the balance and coordination required.
That's such a great analogy.
Nice.
So for our listener who's maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed
Yeah.
by all this talk of cultural nuances and unspoken languages,
Right.
what's one piece of advice they should take away?
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Okay.
Everyone stumbles when they're learning a new language.
Mhm.
It's part of the process. The important thing is to keep practicing, keep listening,
Right.
and keep immersing yourself in that culture.
And to remember that the British are generally quite forgiving,
Yes,
especially if they can see that you're making an effort.
absolutely. And don't limit yourself to those formal settings, like
Mhm.
the ones that we've explored in these dialogues. Chat with your neighbor, join a local club, or even strike up a conversation in the queue at the supermarket.
Right.
Those everyday interactions are some of the best ways to really learn and absorb the nuances of the language.
So we've talked about this politeness and indirectness, but what about that other key element that Katie emphasizes? Clear and concise expression. How does that fit into the picture? It seems counterintuitive that clear and concise expression would be so important in a culture that values politeness and indirectness. How do those two concepts work together?
Well, it's not about being blunt, it's about conveying your message in a way that's effective while still adhering to those social norms.
Okay.
Think of it as elegant efficiency.
So it's not about dumbing down your message, but refining it.
Exactly. Katie, with her background in English literature,
Hmm?
emphasizes that clarity and conciseness are really essential for effective communication,
Right.
especially for someone navigating a new language.
Mhm.
Choosing your words carefully, structuring your sentences logically, and avoiding unnecessary jargon all contribute to making sure that your message is understood.
It reminds me of that famous quote, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time.
Yeah.
It takes effort to be concise.
Indeed, and this principle applies even more when you're learning a new language.
Hmm.
You're already processing so much information, so being able to express yourself clearly and succinctly can make a big difference.
So it's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
Absolutely. Nonverbal communication plays a huge role, especially in British culture,
Mhm.
where a lot is conveyed through those subtle cues.
Okay.
Things like maintaining eye contact, using appropriate gestures, and being mindful of personal space
Right.
all contribute to how your message is received.
So we've explored some of these intricacies of British English, but language is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
What other cultural aspects do you think are crucial for someone making a smooth transition to life in the UK?
That's a great question. Understanding the unspoken rules of social etiquette is vital.
Okay.
For instance, queuing is a huge part of British culture.
Okay.
Whether you're waiting for the bus or buying groceries, it's really important to respect the queue and wait your turn patiently.
Yeah, I've heard stories about how seriously the British take their cues.
It's true. It's seen as a matter of fairness and order. Another important aspect is pub culture.
Yeah.
Pubs are often at the heart of communities in the UK, and understanding the unspoken rules of pub etiquette can really go a long way in making connections.
So don't jump the queue and learn how to order a pint properly.
Exactly.
Excellent advice.
But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to approach those cultural differences with an open mind and a willingness to learn.
All right, so to wrap this all up, what's the one key takeaway for our listener who's embarking on this journey of learning essential English for the UK?
I would say embrace the challenge, be patient with yourself, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. The journey of learning a new language and adapting to a new culture can be incredibly rewarding.
Remember, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
Don't just listen to this deep dive.
Yeah.
Go out and practice. Strike up a conversation with your neighbor, order a coffee in a cafe, or even try booking a restaurant table. The more you immerse yourself, the faster you'll learn.
And remember, Katie's online learning platform is a fantastic resource for continuing your language journey. We'll be sure to include a link in the show notes.
To our listener, we wish you all the best on your new adventure in the UK.
Happy learning!